And welcome to tomorrow. My name is Jamie Higginbotham. And now, before we begin, do please feed the monster. That's the algorithm on YouTube. Your like, your comments, your subscriptions, all that fun jazz helps the show a great deal. I'm not going to hammer on this. You guys all know the routine. We hate feeding the monster. You hate the monster, but it's a part of life that we all have to deal with. Having said that, thank you so much for joining. If you saw this week, we did have to start a little bit late. We had a pre-show that we just had. It was kind of fascinating. It had nothing to do with space, but we want to continue that in the post-show. So this week, we are actually going to make the post-show available to everyone, members and not members, just because I think it's a really interesting and somewhat important conversation. So we're going to keep that going. However, that doesn't belong on the main space. It's not a space thing, right? So, that's that. But here, welcome to the space show. We've got a whole group of people today. Let's see here. Whoosh! I actually have to hit the button. And welcome, everyone. We got Space Mike, we got Zach, we got Jared, we got Ryan, and Dave actually showing. Dave is normally only in the post show. And then, yeah. So, welcome, everyone. And I did want to start off. I read a story, and I didn't really... I've been kind of busy at the day job, and so I didn't really have a chance to fully comprehend it. Actually, I think I saw a tweet, and I'm like, this can't be real. And the tweet was something about there was a hypergol leak on station, or some sort of fuel leaked into an airlock. Does anyone ever? What happened there? Someone educate me as to what's going on there.
Oh my goodness. They apparently had detected a weird smell at the International Space Station, and Don Pettit actually described it as a spray paint-like smell, and determined it was coming from the Russian section of the station not long after the latest Progress vehicle, Progress MS-29, also designated Progress 90, recently docked to the space station this week. And they were able to, it wasn't that big of a deal. It ended up being a minor issue. They were able to turn on air scrubbers and air filters and be able to get rid of it and detect, normal air levels just later on that same day. So it wasn't, that huge of a deal. But after a little bit more investigation, there is, and it's not quite official yet. It's actually a rumor, but it's looking like the previous Progress vehicle that was currently docked to that spot. And I want to pull up just a quick overlay here so that we can see what we're talking about. So what we're talking about is the Progress 90 vehicle that is kind of in the upper right corner. That's docked to the space-facing orientation of the International Space Station. Not the one that is underneath, that's closer to the Naka. That's where the crewed vehicle, Soyuz MS-26 is. And Progress 89 at the back is currently being used for station orbit keeping. So the latest one is Progress 90, and that's where they were having the issue. The previous vehicle just before that, apparently they forgot to purge some of the propellant lines that they normally purge before they do undocking, because the Progress vehicles refuel the hypergols on the Zvezda module especially, and a little bit for Zarya sometimes, for their station keeping that they normally do for the International Space Station. So it turns out what it looks like is that they apparently forgot to purge those lines before they did the previous undocking, and that led to a little bit of trace amounts of the fuel that they refuel the Vespa module with getting inside of that area there. But
what is that fuel?
It's the type of fuel that they normally use for the RCS thrusters. I believe that it's the UDMH fuel. Just a second.
Hang on.
It's a highly toxic residue. It's definitely the hypergolic propellant that we're told to stay away from. Yes. I hate to break it to you, but it is.
It's okay.
We've regularly been using it there since.
What have I heard about it? I've heard two things about these types of hypergolic propellants, which is that one, you can breathe them once, and the second is that they supposedly smell like fish, but nobody's lived long enough to confirm it. So,
well, apparently it smells like spray paint, right? Didn't he say spray paint? Isn't that
yeah, and he was all the way in Node 3 too, a little ways. Yeah, so, hydrazine. Yeah, a lot of hydrazine.
Oh my god! So
gross
is
stuff.
this? I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around this.
So Jamie,
go ahead, Dave.
It sounds like that when they separated,
the piping vented a little bit, and some of the venting ended up inside the docking adapter and did not evaporate by the time the next progress showed up. So that when they made it and opened up the docking area, there was a residual, probably milligrams, but still residual amount of the fuel left inside the docking adapter that was exposed to the space station once they opened the interior door of the docking adapter.
Okay, so the Progress vehicle puff hypergulls, right, and then accidentally puffs on the docking adapter. A little bit of it, sticks, and then the next vehicle comes and we reopen that seal, and it's like, this smells funny. And so that's what we think happened. So is this an engineering problem? Like, is this designed? Because I would expect that you don't blow hypergulls at your docking adapter. Maybe it's me.
If it is true that they forgot, if the Russian mission controllers forgot to purge the propellant valves before the undocking of the previous vehicle that was there, then that tells me that that's a routine procedure that they normally do in order to make this safe and prevent that from happening. But somewhere along the line got forgotten on this week's checklist.
Yeah, this sounds like an SOP failure.
Yeah, that it's hard. Like when you're doing this, I know, kinda, right? Like when you're doing this stuff for decades, right? And then there's like one step that you accidentally skip. It's super bad that they potentially skip that step. But at the same time, I feel like I understand where that's coming from, right? Like it just takes once, So, man, that sucks.
Thankfully, everything that they have there was able to prevent this from being a much more serious issue. And like Jared said, them only finding out what it truly smells like once.
Well, I guess
I didn't have that because the systems in place were able to prevent that from happening, and it might not have even been that much to present that danger in the first place. Who knows?
But what system? What system? Like,
They turned on two separate Soviet and American air scrubber systems. One in the American half and one in the Soviet half. I assume both are probably activated carbon, but I'm not sure. But there would be circulating extra air through filter systems to pull the organics out of the air.
So, and then the question is, wouldn't there be any detectors? Like, I feel like there would absolutely be if you've got hypergolics near the docking adapter, wouldn't you have internal filters sensors that are smelling for hypergolics effectively and like throwing alarms as soon as they detect even a little bit? I mean, we do that on the ground.
Probably not in their scenarios of failure because we knew we always purge it. Yeah, right.
I guess. Well, hopefully, are there any mitigation I saw this on like a tweet, and so I was like, this sounds insane to me. I don't understand. So thank you for filling me in. I feel like I'm the last one in the space community to actually know, but like, here you go. So are there any mitigation techniques that they're doing, or is it just like, don't skip that step in the future?
Don't skip that step again.
Don't skip that step.
There's a new sticky note on the monitor that says, don't forget.
It's got the yellow highlighter on it, like this one's really important. The little tab thing.
Yes.
It's like that scene in Apollo 13 where they're like, "What's this?" And he said, "Oh, well, it's a note to not eject you while you guys are in the LEM." So,
first progress visit was in 2000, I think. So this has been one of those steps for a while, and yes, I'm sure that they have done all of that, but yeah.
It feels like there's been a whole bunch of problems with the Russian side of things as, these last couple of years, right? Like we had a hole in one of their spacecraft, two of their spacecraft had the thrusters stuck, right? Yeah, like one of them threw them into a, I'm not going to call it an uncontrolled spin because I don't think that's fair, but like,
how about a loop-to-loop?
Yeah, a little bit. Like it was push station out of alignment. Right, like that wasn't good.
It was very much not in control. Yeah. It was out of control.
They were just going in and out of TDRS, right?
Yeah, they were. It was completely unexpected and I don't want to necessarily say uncommanded, but the module Iocca did exactly what it shouldn't have done.
And
So,
didn't it
I
only
mean-
stop because they ran out of propellant?
Event,
Wasn't
yeah,
that
for
the
that
thing
one, for
too?
the
Like-
Naka one, yeah,
Yeah.
Nauka, excuse
Yeah.
me. That's exactly
And
what happened.
and
They
all
had to
the
just
other
let it go.
modules, all the other modules were fighting it too, and they couldn't overcome it. So, yeah, it was a very serious issue.
But I mean, to Greg's point, like Russian manned space program running on empty, it kind of it feels like that's a lot of mistakes. Not that the U.S. hasn't made mistakes, right? Not that everyone hasn't made mistakes in space, but like it just seems like maybe it's just me, but it feels like there's just like issue after issue after issue, and I know these are spread out over several years, but this latest one with like they had man shouldn't even laugh, like they could have killed everyone, right? Or am I just misunderstanding this? But like if there's enough hypergol that makes it into station,
It'd be real bad.
it'd be really like you inhale that, doesn't it burn your lungs? Like doesn't it eat your lungs from the inside out? I mean, it kills you.
Yeah, it
So,
essentially
like-
irritates them, and then your body's reaction to it, generating mucus and stuff, just essentially drowns you in your lungs. So
So it's pneumonia. It's like the worst case of pneumonia ever.
In zero
Yeah.
gravity, just to add on top of it.
it's all
Great
floating,
point,
too.
Zach. Yeah.
Oh gosh.
All right. Well,
I will say they're
Well, I
making it easy that if they want to leave in 2028, I don't think we'll all be crying. It might be, okay, we'll get a couple stable years.
did I miss
I
this?
will
Are they
be.
looking to?
I'll be one
are
of the
they
dozens who cry.
Are they looking to leave in 2028, or is that just like rumors?
They're the only
Possibly,
one that hasn't
maybe.
they're the only one that hasn't renewed past 2028. Everyone else has, and they're talking a lot more about Ross and other stuff, and not talking ISS in like their future plans.
But how much of that is talk and how much of that is we can actually build stuff, right? Because I think it's a very clear fact that the Russian economy is not in a great state right now. They're spending a ludicrous amount of money on the war in Ukraine. They're really not spending any money on the space program. And we saw those pictures a month, 2 months ago of Oriole and some other hardware which is required for this new Ross station. And they need a new pad to get to the Ross station. And it's like, you can talk about, I'm building a space station tomorrow and it's going to be 3 times bigger than the ISS and it's going to be amazing. But it's not actually going to exist. You know, like how much of this is actually talk and how much of this is, we just don't have any money left. How much of this is actually real? I personally, I really doubt that any of this, the situation they're currently in, I think it's impossible for them to ditch the ISS in 2028 in favour of the Ross station. Now, I think there is a chance they could ditch the ISS in 2028, but there is no way the Ross station will be anywhere near ready in 4 years' time, 3 years' time even.
I'd agree with
So,
that.
you know,
I think I'll just throw my wild card out there, which is I think that the Russians are going to kind of remove themselves from the ISS and go over to Tiangong possibly. So that's, at least to me, that makes the most sense in terms of what they may end up actually wanting to do, sort of working with a partner that they feel is more aligned with what they actually want to do in space. So as to whether that actually is a good and actionable idea, I obviously can't tell the Russian space program what to do. So
I wouldn't be mad about it though.
yeah, yeah.
love to see
it's
it.
it's very it
That would
just
be-
would not surprise me at all.
Plus, all their
That-
stuff is already compatible.
Well, and they were the second country to sign on to China's ILRS stuff for the moon. So,
Yep.
Now, China's not exactly happy with them right now with the war in Ukraine
Yeah.
either, and has kind of put them in a corner. So, we'll see. But
So,
Yeah.
for those who don't remember, back when Space Vidcast first started, our shtick was it was basically Carrie Ann and myself, and I was the space nerd, and she didn't really know anything about space. And so it was kind of, she would just ask me questions, and I would answer those questions because, you know, there were probably a lot of other people who didn't know about any of this stuff. Somehow, over the years, this is flipped, and now I doesn't know what's going on. I had no idea Russia was working on a brand new space station.
Yeah.
I'm literally learning this in this show right now. So
Get this too. They want to launch it into a polar orbit so that they can reach it from Vostochny and not have to launch from Baikonur anymore.
So, well, okay, that actually kind of makes a little bit. By the way, ISS itself is also in a really weird orbit, and it's in that weird orbit for kind of that exact reason. So you can get to it from like the U.S. and Baikonur. So you kind of
Baikonur
have these
and
like
Cape Canaveral.
Yeah, exactly. So if you don't mind, could someone just fill me in on the Russian space station? Because I'm just now learning that they want to build this, and apparently it's going to be, they want it to be larger than the International Space Station. They haven't started building any of it. So
That's not true. They have started
Oh,
building
okay.
at least one module of it. There's been plans for a long time. I mean, the Nauka module really held up the schedule for a lot of things. And not long after that was the Pritchard, the little ball docking adapter that is on the bottom of it. It has 6 docking ports, only one of which, well, 2 of which are used. The permanent docking to the Nauka module, and then the bottom where visiting vehicles are now able to dock there. And they had what's called the NEM module, which is essentially like a science and power module, which is almost exactly down to the centimeter one of the Mengtian or Wengtian modules on the Tiangong, one of the modules on the side that has a large amount of laboratory space and then a large set of solar panels on the end. Originally, Russia wanted to build 2 of those, but they've only actually started building one of them. And instead, the original plan was to dock that to the International Space Station. But now here we are in 2024 with possibility of them dropping out in only 4 years. Why send that brand new expensive module to the International Space Station when they could launch it to a different orbit instead? Or maybe even like you brought up, that possibility of launching it to Tiangong and adding it as an addition to their space station. But as of right now, if they don't do a team up with Tiangong and continue with this Ross station idea into a polar orbit, that would be one of the modules, and they would send up another type of core module that, or node module rather, that other modules like it could be able to dock to and have a really, really similar architecture to the Tiangong initially until they get to further expansions. And as of right now, there's only like 3 other modules that have like serious design work and only the very beginnings of metal being bent for it. The only that NEM1, that science and power module, is the only one that actually is somewhat close to being flight ready. Still probably 1.5 to 2 years to 4 years away with how slow progress is going. But it is built. They are doing tests for it. It's doing vacuum chamber stuff. Like that piece actually has some construction to it. But it's Russia. Their program's janky.
well, but didn't you say they also want to launch out of their new spaceport as well? Which
That's right.
that was
Vostochny.
like, yeah, and that's the brand new one that was like delayed by huge amounts of corruption and whatnot.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
they
and
barely
everything-
got. Go ahead.
I mean,
Dave.
everything Soviet right now is being grossly delayed because, they're dependent on Western semiconductors and lots of Western technology that they can't get because of sanctions. So, it's a little tough over there right now.
So
And they're-
okay,
They're also looking at trying to move everything back kind of on like homeland for them, because there are reports at least that China is going to try to outbid them for pads in Kazakhstan when their contract ends in a few years, because the Kazakhstan contracts are coming up.
Kazakhstan's been charging them rent for a couple of years. It's been amazing. They negotiated and haggled and basically like locked it down. Like this kind of went under the radar a couple of years ago. I want to say this was in 2019. It might have been in 2018. Kazakhstan like locked down the facility and was even like holding some engineers there hostage. Not violently or anything. They weren't at gunpoint, but it was like, we're not letting you leave. We're not letting you go home. We're not letting anything come through and any deliveries be made until we figure out the situation. This is on our soil. We own this now. Yes, it's your hardware, but you're going to have to pay us rent for using our land. And until Russia caved and paid them what they asked for, they were not allowed to use Baikonur. I'm so proud of Kazakhstan. Good for you.
Man, we should have a whole show about like just
Where's
all
my
of this
money?
stuff. Yeah, actually, Space Mike. Yeah,
Where's my
You should-
money, Russia?
you should do. You should
You
just do a
ain't getting
series
none of this.
You should just do a series of what's happening in Russia, because like there's a whole bunch
nuts.
happening with regards to their space program that like, and maybe it's just me, right? Because the day job does keep me fairly heads down, and so I don't see a lot of this stuff. I see a lot of what's happening at day job, but then like I'm just out of touch with the rest of space now. So
I would love to dive into it, but there's so many depressing things about it that's affecting all of this that's tied to the Ukrainian war. Not just now, but even back what happened in 2014 and before that, even all the way back to post World War II. And it's super sad and super depressing and a lot of gray areas. And it's hard to, not take sides and to stay partial when it's like, there's bad guys on all sides. There's bad guys who have done terrible things on all sides. And yet I'm still rooting for the programs. I'm still rooting for the Russian program and the Ukrainian program. I would love to see that have an amazing comeback, but I don't know. Oh, I'm getting echo. I don't know who's playing stuff, but
I muted David. So David Lane Addict came in, and David, I've muted you because you've got a lot of background noise. You're going to have to go onto headphones in order for us to hear you. Go ahead, Jared.
I was going to say Spaceflight is a very interesting place because of the fact that it is so acutely attached to politics and things like that, and the international intrigue, and honestly, you don't really need a spy novel for some of these things. You could just write what actually happened in some cases with Spaceflight,
and it's just as good as a spy novel.
And you've got you got your James Bond book, So it's just such the intrigue in Spaceflight is endless, and for better, for worse, right? It's much like anywhere else. There, some of it is great and it's amazing, and the stories are fantastic. And then Space Mike, like you mentioned, some of it is just absolutely soul crushing and just, oh man, like we should be better than this. So, but it's just like anything human. You run the gambit with it. So.
The other part that gets me super depressed is America's role in all of this. And it's really hard to talk about because it's, I only want to talk about the cool spaceflight stuff and, hopes for the future. And it's all mired and has all of this evolved, including my country. And it's so hard to talk about. And I want to talk about it, don't get me wrong, but I don't know how to do it in such a way that it's just like, whoa, I thought this was a spaceflight channel, not a hardcore war documentary showing all sorts of crimes against humanity. Because it goes deep. The rabbit hole goes deep.
Well, other than commercial space, most national space programs are deeply tied to national geopolitical events and pride. Most
wild.
national space programs have a huge element of this is us showing how good our nation is, and that pride element and that geopolitical element ties into everything in the program. It really doesn't matter which national program you're looking at. Even at a level, Ariane Space or ESA, those are national programs that make their decisions not necessarily in what's the best for everything, but what promotes their national pride and their national goals.
I mean, even look at the Chinese launch, the Chinese crewed launches to Tiangong. Like when the clock hits T0, they're all laying there and they all have to salute. When the clock hits T0 and that rocket launches, like during launch, they have to salute because it's the national pride, and that's what their culture dictates they do. So, that's a very good point.
Yes, it is indeed a competition of my missile is bigger than yours, at times.
Okay,
I got rid. I guess my point is I don't. Why would we shy away from this, right? Like I feel like people are kind of sick of the playing politics and just being politically safe on stuff. Just they want to hear the way it is, and they don't necessarily want it sugar coated. And you can tell a story and tell both sides of the story and be like, yeah, this kind of sucks and this part kind of sucks, but it could lead to a better tomorrow this way. I don't know. I mean, I feel like,
Yeah.
it might
There's
not be
noth-
great stuff, but like I think people just want the truth. They just want to hear what's happening.
I think
Yeah,
it can be
there's-
done.
there's-
It just has to be done well, and it has to be. You have to walk that line, like you were just saying. Both sides of it suck, but let's look at our history. I think, and we're starting to see that again. We're starting to see a shift back to, you know what? A lot of our history might not be great in different times, but it got us here. Now, how do we go from here forward? And we can't change it. It is what it is. I mean, the whole U.S. space program, it rapidly picked up because Russia had a thing beeping over our head. That was, we were scared. Like, that became a big part of that race. So, where we're going to go after it. So it's an awkward topic.
And
is, yeah.
I mean, you also look at the engineering base as well that was involved in Russia and the United States around World War II, right? Like here in the United States, you had Robert Goddard, who was not particularly well enjoyed, mostly because people just weren't really, on board with the stuff that he was correct about. And then in the Soviet Union, you had a multitude of people in the 40s, not just Korolev, but so many people.
There was a
working
whole
together with
rocket
that.
club.
Yeah, there was. It was all rocket club, and same thing with Germany as well at that time. Hermann Oberth was sort of the overall guy that got all of this rocket club inspired, which then the rocket club, no real nice way of putting it, was basically said kill people, and that's history, right? That's the way it works. And then there was the big scramble towards the end of World War II for the Soviet Union and the United States to grab as many of the Germans as they could in order to add on and sort of be like an additional, I don't want to call it supplement, because there were even times where they led those programs in these new countries that they had gone to. So if you want to shy away from history, you can, but you're not going to get the whole story. And if you shy away from the history of things, you don't get the truth either. And that's a really, I don't think a lot of people are going to, I don't think a lot of people who care about portraying history correctly want to lie about things. So I feel like that's a big thing. But obviously take that, your mileage may vary on certain places. That I know for me personally, I don't sugarcoat it. Even when I'm talking to kids about the history of it, I'm like, yeah, war drives a lot of stuff. So
Their
so it goes.
rivalry always fascinated me. I mean, the big four guys, there's Korolev, there's Glushko, there's Chalome, and I always forget his name, Yangel. And they all knew each other in the 1920s. As a matter of fact, they corresponded. They wrote letters to the editor to the Die Rocket magazine, the Rocket magazine, that Hermann Oberth's group was doing and that Werner von Braun was a part of, in addition to a whole bunch of other German scientists. And there was a brief period of time where all those four guys from Russia, the guys from Germany, and Robert Goddard and the American Rocket Association at the time were all in correspondence with each other before Dr. Goddard died. That blows my mind. And yes, there is this whole, Nazi history to everything, but it really is. I mean, the A4, the V2, really is the grandfather of all rockets, and you can trace histories back. And even things that have caused a whole bunch of geopolitical conflicts, like who hasn't heard of the Scud missile and all of the worries and fears about Scud missiles in the Middle East or Africa or North Korea or wherever. Where did Scud missiles come from? Well, they happen to come from a corrupt bureau within Ukraine that was selling them to the highest bidder. And when it was discovered that they were doing that, it was shut down. This was before the end of the Soviet Union. This was in the 80s. Actually, no, this was in the 70s. Excuse me. But like there is this whole thing of like where that came from and the political motivations for that. And that technology was never supposed to get out. And that whole Scud missile fiasco, I believe, even though it's not ever said out loud, might have been the reason for a lot of the ITAR reform. That's just my hypothesis, though. I don't know. No one's ever told me that. But we wanted to prevent another Scud missile incident.
I think the moral of the story, though, is that like there's a lot of amazing. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff in the past that has led us to the present, which is going to push us into the future. And I think, I don't know, Space Mike, you really seem to understand a lot of this stuff. And I think a lot of people would enjoy small snippets every week of like, hey, here's the latest, you know,
Actually, here's a
in
quick
Russia.
freebie. Here's a quick freebie that I would love to point out and just do a quick thing about. The Ukrainian rocket company Ushmash that does the Zenit rockets and Dnepr rockets, that company also builds the country's buses, their public metro buses, and a lot of their tractors. And for those of you who remember at the beginning of the Ukrainian war, the tractors were kicking butt and knocking over a bunch of the Russian tanks that were coming in. And that was like a weird moment for Ushmash, and they switched all of their production energies for what was left over towards the tractors and the buses versus the rockets that they were manufacturing, which they are still slowly doing. They're slowly building a handful of Zenits and they're not even sure when those are ever going to launch, but they pivoted to that. And I mean, actually just in the past couple of weeks, that facility in Dnepropetrovsk has also been under attack again. And I believe their facility got hit, but I don't know what the damage is yet, which tells me it was either nothing or really bad. So
tell me that wouldn't make the world's most epic YouTube short, right?
Yeah.
Just be like, here's a rocket company, here's why they're making tractors, and
because they can roll
right,
tanks.
Well,
right, yeah.
I mean, in a way, that's the General Motors of World War II, who made tanks and buses and cars and airplanes. That's not an uncommon combination of heavy manufacturing makes things that heavy manufacturing makes, and they don't really care at some level whether it's airplanes or buses or cars. They're all heavy assemblies, and they all get put together pretty much the same way.
All right. My point is, this is amazing content, and this would be great. Let's build little things on the channel and put it out there, and I think people would love it. That's it. Yeah. Why is this rocket company? This is the thumbnail. We're fighting each other. Why is this rocket company making tractors? Right? Yeah.
It's more the other way. I think it's this tractor company making rockets, because I think they started out. In land transportation.
Yeah, just general.
Well, the other
much like
thumbnail we could do.
ours, Saturn was built by Chrysler.
Wait, what?
Yeah, a lot of the original contractors for Redstone, Jupiter, Atlas were car companies, and a lot of the pieces, not every stage, but quite a few of the pieces of the Saturn rocket were built by Chrysler. Freaking Chrysler.
Admittedly, it wasn't the car part of Chrysler that did it. Because
true.
if it was,
But I mean, that's what I think of.
Look, if it was, the electrical systems would have blown out in the first couple of minutes of flight.
But it would have had really nice. But it would have had really nice fins on it.
Yes, it would have.
Remember that sponsorship where they gave all the astronauts those cool Corvettes? That's because that company was building a stage of, I don't remember which one. It might have been a piece of Apollo or part of the Gemini rockets or something. But that's why that whole thing happened. It was a publicity stunt for the company to kind of show that we're building rockets and we're their ride to space and their ride on Earth. I think was their advertising tagline or something like that.
Could that be something like some crew Teslas that are going out to Dragons?
Robovan, yes.
Man.
I just saw something the other day
maybe.
that I just saw a little story the other day about Gene Cernan, the commander of Apollo 17, getting pulled over for speeding the day before launch, and he had forgotten his ID, and he was trying to tell the cop, "No, I'm an astronaut. Seriously, this is okay." And then Gunther Wendt, who was the lead of the pad throughout a very long period of NASA's early history, saw him being pulled over and came up and was like, no, that's him. He's an astronaut. So I just can't imagine this little small German man coming up in the middle of my being pulled over by a cop vouching for me.
I'm telling you,
there's
another Jared, that is a YouTube short right there. Just get on camera and be like, here's a fun one for you, and just build a 60-second little story of bet you didn't know this. I'm just telling you.
So, I wonder where Gunther went. So.
Oh my God. All right.
That's
I
classic.
think we've gone like 40 minutes on Russia at this point, but there was some happier news, wasn't there? Like
Yeah, some other cool stuff happened.
Ryan, you had a story you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I'll tag team it with Jared because it's some science stuff as well, which is awesome. But you know, who doesn't? Everyone loved Ingenuity, right? Little helicopter flying around Mars before it unfortunately crashed with a little bit of a dodgy landing. But we have a new flying machine called DragonFly, which, if you don't know, is going to be going to Titan, the largest moon of Saturn, very shortly. And shortly means within the next few years, because this is an interplanetary mission after all. But to add redundancy, there's not just 2 rotors or 1 rotor and 2 blades, however you want to configure it. There is going to be 4/8 rotors or 4 rotors with 2 blades. So they'll have 8 blades, essentially. 8 blades, which means giga redundancy or terra redundancy, however you want to say it, which is awesome. And the reason it's in the news this week is because SpaceX was selected to launch it with Falcon Heavy, which is, you know, SpaceX is just sweeping up all the massive interplanetary contracts at the moment. Europa Clipper, it's been launching telescopes and other science missions for ESA, and now it's swept up Dragonfly, which is just awesome.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that simply because this, once again, this is SpaceX helping enable these really amazing missions with the low cost that they're able to provide. So instead of having to dump a huge amount of money on the launch services, we end up seeing some of that money going to things like the instrumentation and other things on the actual spacecraft, or in this case probe, or drone that's going to be used with it. But this is a little bit of a time away from where we're at, though, because the launch window is going to open on July 5th and close on July 25th in the year 2028. So we've got a little bit of time before this happens. I haven't heard as to how long it is going to take yet. So I've seen 2034 as the official arrival date around there. So some in there, it's going to do a gravitational assist with the Earth to gain a little extra. And very interestingly, this is actually going to be the first dedicated outer solar system mission that will not use Jupiter as a gravitational assist, because Jupiter's just not in the correct position with its flight path there. But even with that, still 6 years from Earth to Saturn. That's a year faster than Cassini took in order to do that. And Cassini had a Jupiter assist as well. But entry and descent will be using systems that are similar to what was used on Curiosity and Perseverance landing, or entry and descent systems. Parachutes are going to deploy, and then eventually the lander will be released, and it will basically take a powered flight down to the surface and automatically do that. High gain will not be deployed until it reaches the surface. But very exciting that this is going to happen. Supposed to land in an area of Titan called Shangri-La, which is a area of dark grained dunes. And these are not really sand dunes. We really don't know what they're actually made out of. They could be water, little granules of frozen water, because it is like minus, oh my gosh, what is it? I want to say like minus 180
it's
Celsius.
Cold, Jared.
It's cold. And it's just going to be a really, really interesting mission. Able to fly up to 30 kilometers a day in the atmosphere. So atmosphere of Titan is thicker than the Earth's, and the gravity on Titan is significantly less than the Earth's. So you actually get about 40 times the amount of flight capability with your vehicle than you would here on Earth on Titan. It's wild just how much better you can fly on Titan just by putting something there. So I'm so excited about this. This is going to be great.
And I don't know if we can bring up one of those pictures again, but you can see those rotors are really, then they don't look big compared to the body of the spacecraft, right? And that in part is because of the density of the atmosphere and the lack of gravity. And I think it's also important to point out this isn't like a shoebox-sized drone, right? This isn't like a DJI Phantom-sized drone. This is like the size of a car. This is a significantly sized spacecraft.
Yeah. Those rotors are about 1.5 meters each. So they are, this ain't no small thing. And then Dawn of Clarity also bringing up a really good point.
And that's kind of an old render too. This is a newer render. Guys, this is literally the same body as the Curiosity rover. It's the same RTG on the back. Like, it's literally take away the wheels, put on some landing skids and some propellers, and have a different head on it instead of the camera mast. And that's what this is. It is exactly the same size. And the delivery system, the capsule shell, is the exact same. I believe they call it a Genesis module. I forget what their exact designation, but it's the exact same thing that the Curiosity rover rode in on its way to Mars. Same size and everything. It's the same model.
Yeah, and it's literally just under 0.5 ton. So obviously, without having to have motors and suspension and wheels and other things like that, you can definitely drop the weight on it. And then, of course, because you're wanting to fly, you're trying your best to make the weight conscious decisions with that. And just to go back and correct myself, it's actually going to be about 16 kilometers per flight maximum. So basically about a half hour of flight time with it. So very excited for this. So.
And that point there from Dawn of Clarity is also a big, like, the reason why flying on Falcon Heavy is like such a big deal, because it has a radioisotope thermal generator or something like that, which is essentially a mini nuclear power plant which is used to generate electricity. It doesn't have solar panels on it, so unlike Ingenuity, this will be a flying machine with just a nuclear generating capability on board. But Falcon Heavy isn't nuclear rated yet, right? So only like Titan and Atlas have been nuclear rated so far.
That's right.
So Falcon Heavy will need to go through that nuclear certification to be able to carry such a payload on board, which is awesome that Falcon Heavy is deemed, at least right now, like safe enough for nuclear material to fly on, which is awesome.
Yeah. So I'm very excited for them to be able to do that. So that should open up for a lot more, because we are trying to sort of restart production of materials to start making these RTGs again. Because I don't want to necessarily say we're in short supply of them, but obviously we have a limited supply of them, because these are things that you can turn into weapons grade material. So you want to make sure that you don't make that weapons grade material, and assure everybody in the world that we're not making this to be weapons grade material. We're making this to power spacecraft. In order to do that, it takes a lot of time. So that's why it is really important to take our time in doing this, and also to have more options to fly. And with Falcon Heavy getting its shot at becoming nuclear rated, that opens up the possibility. So now we really do need to restart nuclear production of those radioisotope thermoelectric generators, or those RTGs.
And I thought that the type of plutonium was actually like a waste type, that it was not the weapons grade, but it was already something that was in the decay process. Because, and I'm ignorant, I'll be the first to admit, but the way I understood the process was that it was the decay process of the plutonium that were catching the heat, like the opposite of a radiator.
Yes.
And that's what is powering the process in order to generate electricity from that. It's not necessarily that it's a nuclear power plant or anything like that.
Yes.
It's just taking advantage of the natural decay and the heat that type of plutonium puts off. And I don't know which type it is, but that's what I thought.
So basically what you do is you take the radioactive material, which is generating heat, and then you put it near a thermocouple, and the direct conversion of heat turns into electrical energy. So that's literally all it is that we're just taking heat and turning it into electricity, which is, I mean, that's what we do here on Earth, right? So, except most of the time when we're doing it, we're just boiling water, right? That's how do we do power on Earth? Well, we take water and we boil it for most of it. So,
most advanced steam engine ever.
Yeah, we're figuring out other ways to do it. This is boiling, but without the water involved. It's just the heat part of it. But the
Torbjorn,
production.
thank you.
Yeah,
That's what it was, I think.
It can be a
Thank you, Torbjorn.
byproduct. So what's up?
Vehicle
Oh, yeah,
because
hold
it
up.
uses the RTG to charge a battery at night, so they can store up low density energy overnight on Titan's night, and then during the day they will run the battery down flying till they have to stop, and then wait for the next night and continue recharging the battery, similar to how Curiosity had to do the solar thing, but we're not going to have the problem with solar panels getting covered with dust.
Yeah, and that's a very helpful. Plus, we wouldn't really have to worry about that at Titan too. Really, the big reason we're using a RTG at Titan is one, distance. We're really far away from the sun. Jupiter right now is about the limit for solar panels, and even then, when we have solar panels, they're massive, right? You look at Juno, which is currently at Jupiter, and its solar panels are massive. Juice on the way, its solar panels are massive. Europa Clipper, goodness gracious, those solar panels are gigantic. It's like a basketball court. Those are huge. The largest solar panels flown on an interplanetary probe. Just ridiculous. And then also the atmosphere at Titan, there's clouds. So it blocks a lot of light. So not only is it dark out where Saturn is at, also you're landing in an area where it's basically overcast, which is not particularly helpful if you're trying to get sunlight. So luckily there's some things at Titan that we can take into consideration with the design, like weather on Titan is calm. Winds are a very rare thing on Titan, and then when there are winds, we have estimated that they are at a maximum of like 2 to 3 kilometers an hour. So essentially, not exactly non-existent, but certainly well enough that a computer with flight controls should be able to handle zipping along through that. It's not exactly like we're going through like a 20-knot crosswind or something trying to land, out there. So
I think we need to ship out Big Jet TV to Titan, so when we get those crosswind landings, we can get some good commentary.
Yeah, Devin, let's get them in Airline Videos Live to hook up with each other, and maybe we can do it. So
At least
I
get
gotta-
them to
I
program
will
the
admit-
landing.
I was gonna say, I admit I watch a lot of those like airport landing video things with all the commentary. Oh yeah, it's I think it's so much fun. I enjoy that and Vast Aviation, listening to the FAA commentary. That has nothing to do with this, but like everyone who's a nerd, go subscribe to those channels. You'll enjoy it.
It's great when you're on the plane and you're able to pull it up because cellular connected early enough, so you're watching your plane land from an outside perspective. I'm interested. I'm excited for the Titan stuff, but it opens up. We've kind of got used to the Mars delay. It'll be interesting to see this transition now to a 90-minute one-way delay. So watching landing, that is going to be the most longest 90 minutes ever waiting for confirmation that it's on the ground. So thinking back to Perseverance and them landing, like that was a long, 10 minutes? Now,
7 minutes of terror. It's now the 90 minutes of terror.
Well, hang on. Wait.
I was going to say,
the 7 minutes of terror is the EDL.
Yeah.
Yeah. So because of the thickness of Titan's atmosphere, when you use chutes to slow yourself down, you really slow yourself down, and that's what's going to be happening here. Titan's atmosphere is extremely tall as well relative for where you're at, for the relative size of Titan. So because of that, it is literally in excess of an hour and a half from touching the top of the atmosphere to actually physically touching down on the surface of Titan. It is going to be a long hour and a half, let me tell you. But I mean, it is the drogue shoot phase is going to be over an hour. It's going to be coming down on a drogue for over an hour. Usually you pop a drogue, hold it for like 15, 20 seconds, and then you pop out your main, right? So it's just like landing on Titan requires patience, which is not how you typically land on things in spaceflight, right? Usually you're like, get this thing to the ground now. But Titan's just like, nah, I'm too thick. You can't rush me. You can't rush
wild
this
to
thickness.
me is they're not doing any sort of rocket crane or any of the big balloons to bounce off of or anything. Don't need that. They're just gonna let loose the heat shield and release the DragonFly, and it's going to land under its own propeller power. So
I mean,
all
if
that
you-
weight that they can save from those other systems, you can do more science and have cooler upgrades.
You don't even have to have a big parachute to do this either, because
it's
the
just the
atmosphere's
drogue.
thicker and the gravity's lower. Like the parachutes, I think. Huygens was a part of the Cassini mission. It was the lander that landed on Titan in early 2005. I think its parachutes were like 1.5 meters across. Like the actual Huygens lander was bigger than the parachutes, if I recall correctly, for some of the stages of its entry and descent. Oh man, this is like, I don't want to make it sound like it's easy though, because it's not.
No.
Because this whole sequence has to happen correctly, right? So it's not like they just deploy a drogue and then you go all the way down to the surface. There will still be multiple parachutes that have to be deployed at the correct times in order to make sure that you land at the correct speed. And then, still even then, Dragonfly is going to separate from that system and land on its own anyhow. So it's not like we get to skip a hard part. It's just that the Sky Crane, we're not bringing the Sky Crane to operate on its own. Our own probe is our Sky Crane for this because it flies itself. So it'll just separate and fly itself down to the surface. So, I make that sound like a piece of cake, which it won't be, because it's going to do it all by itself. And then if they really are going to be landing in this area, it could be in essentially rolling dunes of water ice or methane ice grains, which I don't know if you guys have ever been out to sand dune areas with lots of sand dunes before. That could be a slight problem. So, but we'll have to find out.
And
Wow,
Dave,
thank you, Dave
like,
Avery.
wait, right here, I can actually thank him in person. Dave
Thanks,
Avery,
Dave.
wait, sure. Just, there we go. Just gifted 5 memberships. So normally I would say, oh, you're going to have access to the post show. But this week we are making the post show available to everyone publicly, just because it was such an interesting pre-show, which happened because we were having technical issues. And so I was like, you know what, let's just go live a little bit early, have a pre-show, get the community together, have some fun. And it got into a pretty deep conversation, nothing to do with space. And so we're going to continue that conversation in the post show, nothing to do with space. But thank you again, Dave Avery. Week after week, he gifts 5 memberships. So 5 new people have access to the member show. And, all of that helps the show quite a bit. We are actually coming near the end of the show. I think there was one more thing that we were going to, Space Mike, we were going to talk about new rockets.
Oh,
Or
yeah,
do you want
not
to
go
like
too
save
deep
that
in it.
for, you want to
We
save
can
that
save
for,
that for another time, but there was 2 brand new rockets. One is a Methalox, one is a Carolox. They both have 4 engines on their booster stage, and one of them, Landspace, is the one who's had those most impressive test flights so far of their Grasshopper program to have a reusable first stage in Falcon 9 clone. Both of them also had the same type of transporter erectors, where you might see on Falcon launches where the tower that's next to it will pull away right before liftoff of the main rocket, and both of these brand new Chinese rockets we're testing both of those systems. So a lot of this little minor things, but just some cool little upgrades that are on the way to their future plans. And I love how they're kind of doing this interconnectedness of trying out hardware for future stuff on things today.
I find it interesting that a lot of the Chinese next generation rockets look an awful lot like some of the stuff you see down in Starbase, down to the arms and everything. And I'm like, I guess... yeah, I just find it interesting. That's all.
Is
Well,
it too late
it
to not
just
to
says
file
you-
any patents?
They're not going to
Not that it
care.
would matter anyway.
Yeah, they're not going to
Yeah.
care at all. And you file a patent, you're showing them how to do it, right? Like, let's not do that. Yeah,
That's
exactly.
True. That's true.
Hey, but
Yeah.
Elon says all of his stuff is open source anyway, so it really,
Wow.
patents are not.
I think that applies to Tesla. I'm not sure that applies to his other companies. I actually don't know, but like, yeah.
Well, it
yeah.
applies to X because he's GitHub'd large chunks of the source code. So
Well, I think, yeah, well, all right. Yeah. Actually, so I really do, tomorrow has, I mentioned all of this on X. Maybe we'll do this in the post show, but I really would love to move like a good chunk of tomorrow over to X and get off of Discord and move all of that Discord stuff onto X itself. But there isn't like a really great way to have like a group room like that where you can just kind of join just the room. Like you can have groups and you can have like topic subscription areas, but nothing kind of has that linear flow like Discord. So if anyone from X is listening, I'd love to get off of Discord and use X. I just need that like linear chat room flow that people can subscribe to, and then like members only rooms that I can link to things so that like we can, reward our members for helping us week after week. I think that'd be really cool, right? Like keep everything on the platform. Like why do I have to have Discord and X and YouTube? Like it'd be really great to just kind of consolidate it all back down. All right, that's not related to here, there, this, that, or anything else. You know what we should do? We should say thank you to all of our members who helped to make this show. Oh, I have to actually like prepare this. Help to make this show happen. This week's show is going to be made available publicly, but these are the people who help us week after week, month after month, making the shows of tomorrow actually happen. Because it does cost money to do this stuff. It does cost money to, send Space Mike down to Starbase, to get the gear necessary for production, get bandwidth, all that fun jazz. Like it's death by 1,000 cuts is what it ends up being. And so thank you to everyone on these lists to helping to make this happen. And if you would like to help the shows of tomorrow, head on over to youtube.com/TMRO/join. And of course, don't forget to feed the monster, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show. I hate it, you hate it, we all hate it. I wish we didn't have to do this, but we do. If this was something you enjoyed, if you got any value out of the show, please comment, like, subscribe, and share. It's those 4 things. It takes you almost no time to do it, but it makes all of the difference for the shows of tomorrow, and it means the world to me. So thank you very much. I think on that note, we're going to call it here. We've got a lot of words. What word? You're not in the scene, so I'm not sure if anyone could hear you. Could everyone hear Sack when you just said that?
I just heard silence for the last 30 seconds.
Okay. So I will repeat it, which is there is a Black Friday sale on the Tomorrow store. So head over to the Tomorrow store, which is, what is it? Shop.tmro.tv. And then what's the code, Sack? I'll repeat it. No code. It automatically gets added to your cart. 15% off for Black Friday. So grab your Tomorrow shirt on all T-shirts. Grab your Tomorrow. I'm repeating everything he says so you can hear it. There's like this weird awkward silence and then me saying things. So grab your swag. Thank you again, everyone, for helping the shows of tomorrow happen. And we'll see you in just a moment on the public after show. See you, everyone.